Reddit, what is the most ducked up way you got back at someone that wronged you? Throwaways encouraged. When my brother and I were kids, we used to play in our front yard all the time. Once, we were playing baseball and our ball rolled down the hill into our neighbor's backyard. Anyway, my brother and I went inside to find another ball to play with. In those 5 minutes, he walked up the hill and pounded on our front door. My mom answered, and he flew into a rage at her, screaming about the goddamn kids ruining his lawn. My mom tried to calm him down, but he put back his fist as if he was going to punch her. When my mom flinched, he started to laugh and spit on our doorstep. My brother and I saw everything and declared covert war. We were smart. We waited until he wouldn't be too suspicious. To this day, we haven't been caught because everything could have just happened naturally. We didn't do everything at once, but rather over the course of many years. Here is a rough list of all the things I remember doing. Poured female dealer into his cars and houses account intake vents to perfume his air with an unholy stench. Saved up all shards of sharp glass, nails, etc. and would scatter them on the ends of his driveway. Bought high strength / concentrated weed killer and would apply it liberally to his prized shrubs / flowers. Found his car in public parking lots and threw bologna on it to ruin the paint job. No clue if this one actually worked though. Collected roadkill and assorted dead critters we found. We had cats and would throw them under the tarp that covered his pool. Waited until they went on vacation and put sugar all over their doors and windowsills in hope that bugs would get into the house and nest. I still don't feel guilty. The guy was a huge prick. Still is a huge prick, actually. I worked at a place during college that served sandwiches and coffee. It was a cool place. A lot of people hung out there and I liked everyone I worked with, but my boss was the biggest asshole in the world. One week on payday he got all the employees together and told us that we wouldn't be getting paid that week and we would have to wait until next week. We were fine with that, but when the next payday rolled around he didn't have the money. This went on for about a month. We were all working under the table, and he told us that if we quit we would never get any of the money he owed us. We later found out he never planned on paying us. We found out he was blowing his cash on coke and gambling. He stopped showing up to work for like 3 weeks, so it was just the employees running the store. In those 3 weeks we gave away pretty much everything in the store for free. Literally emptied it out. Anyone who came in and ordered something got it for free. We even had a party there one night. Open mic and everything. So he finally shows up and he looks like he has been awake for a week straight. He comes in freaking the duck out. Threatens to beat the shit out of us. Starts throwing things around. I was in the back and saw that he was double parked outside. So I call the campus towing company that was literally a block away. While he is freaking out at us, one of the employees says, "Hey, your truck is getting towed." He runs outside and watches his Escalade get towed away. We all bounced out the back door and never looked back. I posted this in another thread. When I was 13, I woke up in the middle of the night to a man laying next to me in my small bed, staring right at me. I looked at him all confused and told myself, "Oh, silly, you're having a nightmare." So I smiled at him, closed my eyes, and was about to fall back asleep when he started touching my thigh. Two things happened at once. I realized that I was only in my bra and underwear, and that I was definitely not having a nightmare. Feel like I've never felt before gripped every inch of my body, and I think I stopped breathing. He started making his way up to my underwear, presumably to take them off. What did I do? I opened my eyes, and I shit you not said, "Hold on a second. I have to pee." He looked shocked, but didn't stop me as I wrapped my blanket around my body and proceeded to take a few steps toward my bathroom. Then I noticed that my bedroom door was wide open. So I bolted. I ran to my mum's room, banged on the door, and screamed about how there was a man in my bedroom. My mom came out to the hallway and had just started reassuring me that it was a bad dream when the ducker dashed out of my room and toward the front door. My mom froze, but I got the biggest sense of how the duck dare he try to rape me. That's when I grabbed a lamp, ripped the cord out of the wall socket as I started chasing him insanely waving that lamp and screaming all the profanities that my 13-year-old mind has ever heard. I chased that ducker down the streets while my mom called the police. I lost him somewhere in the dark. But when the police came, got statements and started searching the neighborhood. I got my revenge. They caught him hiding in the bushes. Brought him over. And asked me to identify him. I marched right up to that Methodica. Kneed him in the balls and walked away saying hell yes I want to press charges. Edit. That the dancer as 0808 who gave me Reddit gold. LD. Thank you. Too late to the thread, but I'll share a story my dad told me about. My dad used to live in an apartment building with assigned parking, as in every tenant had a designated space that only they were allowed to park in. Well, my dad would regularly come home to find someone else parked in his spot. He had asked the guy politely several times not to park in his spot and had even talked to the landlords who had done nothing about it. So one day he got home to find the guy parked in his spot again and decided enough was enough. My dad had always worked on cars ever since he was 13. He had a jack in his trunk and used that to jack the guy's car up off its rear tires. It was a rear-wheel drive car, which meant my dad now had control of the car. Using the jack he pulled the car across the lot and left it somewhat hidden behind a dumpster. Then he let the car down, put away his jack, parked in his spot and went up to his apartment. Later that day he got a knock on his door. It was a police officer with the inconsiderate neighbor behind him. The officer asked my dad what he had done with the neighbor's car and my dad looked him right in the eye and said he parked in my spot and I've asked him several times not to do so. So I lifted his car up and set it over by the dumpster. Now, to give you an idea about my dad, he's 6'5" and back in the day was really well built. He also has only one eye and the fake one he's got has always been too small, giving him a constant madman look. When he told the officer that he'd lifted the car and moved it himself and even pointed out where the car was through his apartment window, the police officer's eyes got as big as dinner plates. He turned to the neighbor and said, "Sir, I recommend you never park in this man's spot again." Guy stopped parking in my dad's spot after that. My friend pulled a fairly innocent prank on me to pay him back. As we got to a very busy airport to fly to Vegas, I put a lead-lined bag used to protect film going through the X-ray machine in his carry-on. They had to check his bag right there. In it I put a dildo, a tube of Ainley's lubricant, a loose deck of naked men playing cards and dozens of extra small condoms. He of course looked horrified, pleading that it wasn't his, which it wasn't, but no one believed him. They put everything back laughing, and he was allowed through. My girlfriend of 3 years that I dated through high school broke up with me my first semester of college. We went to different schools and I later learned she was hooking up with one of her guy friends there. Anyways, when we both were on break she asked me to bring back all the stuff she had given me. Presents, sweatshirts, cards, etc. So I drive to her house with all the things we've exchanged in the past 3 years. Once I got to her house I saw that she had invited all her friends over and they were sitting with her along with her parents in the garage. Anyways, I walk up with her shit and exchange. Everyone there had that smirk on their face, like they were laughing at me. Anyways, as I give her back her things I say, "If only I could give back your virginity." The look on her parents' faces was absolutely priceless. And I walked out of that lion's den with the biggest smile on my face. I'm sure this is too late and will be buried, but I might as well give it a shot. When I was 15 years old, my parents divorced. We lived on a farm and I bucked bales and pulled fence year around to pay for motorcycle gas. I was also about 6'4", 300 pounds at the time, and in varsity football. I wasn't taking the divorce so well, so I moved in with my mom, who had just got her own place. I was in my bedroom one day and heard a commotion. So I went to the kitchen to look. Right as I turned the corner, I saw her new boyfriend, we'll call him Jim, because that was his name, backhand my mom, knocking her to the floor. She scurried to her feet in disbelief, grabbed her keys, and ran out of the house. Moments later, I heard her lay rubber in the driveway. Seeing my mother flee from this man with such panic and fear in her eyes filled me with rage. I've been mad before, but not like this. I wasn't mad. I was full of pure hatred and rage. My life sucked already. My parents were going through a very messy divorce. I was a misfit in school. My younger brother and sister were both suffering as well. So all in all, I was already furious about everything up until this very second. I confronted Jim, who stood 5'5" and maybe 150 pounds maximum, about hitting my mother, trying to the best of my ability to hold back the rage. He made the worst mistake possible. Jim got physical with me. He raised his hand up like he was going to backhand me, and that's when I snapped. I don't remember how his swing landed. I'm not sure if he was able to land a blow or not. Everything was just a blur. The next thing I could really remember was sitting on his chest punching his face so hard. The back of his head was bouncing off the linoleum. I hit him until he was unconscious and bleeding from every hole in his face. I stood up and went to the bathroom to clean myself. When I got back to the kitchen, he was still unconscious on the kitchen floor, the pool of blood around. His head was still growing. At this point, I thought I had killed him. I dragged him out of the house by his feet to the back of his hilariously jacked up Ford pickup. I dropped the tailgate and threw him into the bed of his truck. I threw his coat, keys and anything else I could find of his in the house in the bed with him and went back into the house. About an hour and a half later, I heard his truck start up and drive off. When my mom came home, she did not even ask about my hands or the half-clean bloody drag marks on the front patio, concrete walkway and the grass. I'm sure she knew exactly what had happened. I'm half convinced that she anticipated my reaction, and that may be why she left me at the house with Jim after he hit her. I don't know. I saw Jim in a gas station several years later, and his face still showed obvious signs of trauma. Bags under his eyes, twisted nose, missing teeth up front, etc. And yes, I feel terrible. Still. Open bracket. TL. Doctor, when I was 15, my mom's new boyfriend hit her right in front of me. He received the beating of his life from a 9th grader. My then high school girlfriend was a total bitch and wanted me to abandon all of my friends. Would always try to bring me down. etc. When I got fed up, I broke up with her on picture day. She took them, but her mascara was everywhere. 2 days later, I told her that I was sorry, blah blah, and I wanted to get back together. She liked having someone to walk on, so of course she said yes. I then broke up with her again on retake day. Fucking nailed it. My friend got roofied and raped by a frat duck about a decade ago at a local high-toned university. Despite a shitton of evidence, he was never arrested, never expelled, never had to face any sort of penalty for this, and managed to get my friend labeled a slut who totally wanted it and was now only pretending it was rape because he wouldn't break up with his girlfriend for her. Pretty charming guy. Really. I put capsicum extract in his eye drops. I had a friend in high school who became an asshole during our senior year. There were a bunch of little things that added up to our friendship falling apart. But at the worst of it, I pooped on his car one night. Real simple. I just crawled up on the hood of his car and took a shit on his windshield. I just knew that he'd walk outside the next day and think, what the duck is this? Apostrophe. Fun fact, we are actually great friends again now. He still has no idea it was me. So I've definitely come to this way too late for karma, but I decided to share this story just for any lurkers to enjoy. When I was in 1st grade, there was this jerk that we'll call Eric who essentially made my life a living hell. He was constantly shoving me down, stealing the ball from me, and would consistently smack me or throw things at me in class when the teacher's back was turned. I often got in trouble for yelling at him or hitting him back. Meanwhile, the sneaky bastard was an angel in her eyes. It's December, and the entire class is excited about 2 things: bring your dad to school day and Christmas. Well, one day in class, our teacher was talking about Christmas and Santa Claus when Eric blurts out Santa isn't real. He's just make-believe for babies. The teacher tried to make him be quiet, but the damage was already done. The entire class was distraught. 2 girls actually had to leave the classroom because they were crying so much. I got home and told my parents what Eric had said. And they convinced me that Santa was real and said that Eric was just a mean little boy. A few days passed without further incident, and it was time for Bring Your Dad to School Day. However, my dad had cancelled a few days before, saying that he had a really important meeting that he couldn't afford to miss. Well, the dads all arrived to class shortly after lunch and were presenting briefly one by one when suddenly, who would burst into the classroom but Santa fucking Claus, letting out a big ho ho ho! Exclamation mark. Exclamation mark. The pudgy street next rode into the classroom, hugged our teacher, and gave a brief presentation about elves and toy making and his reindeer. He then went around the classroom giving all the kids mini raises, and right before he left went say, "Which one of you is Eric?" The teacher pointed him out, and Santa went up to his desk and said something like, "You know Eric, it's not nice to tell people that I'm not real. If you keep being a naughty boy, you'll be getting coal next week." Eric just looked back at him, stunned, and gave a sheepish nod. Santa then went and stood by the doorway, gave a cheery laugh, and right before he walked out looked me dead in the eyes and winked. I was amazed and ran home telling my parents all about what had happened that day. Eric wasn't as mean after that, and everything in the first grade was gumdrops and ice cream. It wasn't until I was in high school that my mother revealed that the Santa Claus was actually my dad. He had gone so far as to buy an expensive fat suit and mask in order to fool me and everyone else. TL. Doctor, my dad dressed up as Santa Claus and came to my first grade class to tell a bully to act right. In 2009 I deployed for a 6-month tour to the Helmand province in Afghanistan, running at least weekly missions from Leatherneck to Nowzad. We were the only unit that would run that route in the entire AO. It was that bad. A month into the deployment, I was just getting 6 months into my first real relationship. It was long distance, as I was stationed in NC and she lived back home in New York. We were planning on getting married, but my staff sergeant gave me a little speech and I decided that it was best to wait until after the deployment. She was already cheating on me 4 months into the relationship. I took it hard, and that's all I thought about for 6 months. While I waited to get back home, I had a bunch of her stuff, and she had some of mine. I never got any of my stuff back, but she had given me this tiny little dancer trinket to wear on my dog tags. Her mother had given it to her before she ran off, so it had some sentimental value to her. Apostrophe. Oh. And 5 months into my deployment, her new level 3 sex offender boyfriend who she left me for goes back to prison for probation violation. I get a message over Facebook that she just found out she's 6 months pregnant, and it's mine. There's no way you just find out you're 6 months pregnant when you weigh 110 pounds soaking wet. It was a sham to get me back. There was no pregnancy. 6 months later, I arrive back home. I go into the subway where she works, and lo and behold she's working. I walk in, and she goes, "Welcome to Sue," and cuts off mid-sentence as she sees me, with a look of absolute horror on her face. I walk in, walk up to the counter, look her dead in the eyes, set the dancer trinket on the counter, shake my head, and turn around and walk out. I could hear her start crying before I got to the door. I'm much more successful out of the military. I have a great job, an amazing girlfriend, and a sweet townhome. I'm about to get a dog here soon. I've never blocked her on Facebook. I just don't see her updates in my newsfeed. She'll poke me every once in a while, but I never poke back. It's nice to know that she can watch me be successful without her, and I know her life is in shambles. About once a year she tries to message me and ask me how I'm doing, but it usually ends with her going on some depressing rant about how she ducked up and wishes she never cheated on me and left me. TLDR, but she cheated on me while I was in Afghanistan. Gave her back sentimental item without saying a word. She's still allowed to see Facebook to see how successful I've become. Edit. There was no child. Please subscribe and leave a like if you enjoyed this video, and if you want to see more of Reddit Universe.